Welcome to Miller's Monsters. I'm Mr. Beelzebub. This young lady right here is Count Luna. Behind me is Edgar P. the Scully. And I've had a rough week with some movies lately, so I dug into my pile of DVDs that I have. I hear Frankie in the back, or Frankenstein. And I found a true classic, The Return of the Living Dead. So we're going to talk a little bit about that after I tell you to please hit the bell, subscribe, hit like, set yourself up for notifications so you don't miss another brain-eating episode, and please tell your friends to give us the try, a watch. And before we get started, maybe, what was that? There be spoilers ahead for sure. Okay, so the 1985 horror comedy sci-fi cult classic, The Return of the Living Dead, was directed by Dan O'Bannon, and it was rumored that Tobe Hooper was thought of to direct this film, but nonetheless, Dan O'Bannon ended up filming the film, and he thought it would only be appeal to horny young men. And that's why there's nudity in this film. So be warned, this is not for the youngsters. Obviously nudity, there's gore, comedy, violence, and then of course just some violent scenes of zombies ripping the flesh off people and eating their brains. But it was first written this script was written first by John A. Russo. And then Dan O'Brien said, hey, if you want me to do this film, we got to redo this script. And I went through several rewrites. A ton of humor was added. And so by the time it was filmed, it hardly resembled John A. Russo's original script. But John A. Russo and George Romero were the writers for Night of the Living Dead. And when it came up to talk about a sequel, they couldn't agree on an idea. So they came to another agreement where George A. Romero would go on and do his sequels under the Dead moniker, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Diary of the Dead. And John Russo, had a mental block there for a minute, folks, went on to do his sequel under the moniker of The Living Dead. So we have the two separate sequels to the Night of the Living Dead, actually. And that's another reason why Dan O'Bannon put a lot of the humor in, is because he felt it was a more direct sequel to what they did of Night of the Living Dead, and he didn't want to do another sequel of that, after George A. Romero, did his brilliant Dawn of the Dead. You can't top that, folks. That's the #1 zombie movie ever. And so the premise goes is we have a couple of bumbling warehouse employees, a manager and a new hire, Frank and Freddie, and they are he's teaching them the ropes, and he tells them a story about how, Night of the Living Dead was really a true story. And what happened is the military accidentally shipped some chemicals. They were being naughty and playing with chemicals, and it animated the living dead. So as they get talking more, Frank goes, hey, you want to see it? And so Freddie, not believing him, says, hell yeah, I want to see it. Who doesn't want to see a zombie in a can, right? So they go down there, and he's showing them the zombie. They take the lid off, and it has glass over the top, and you get a good look at the zombie, later known as Tarman, and pretty famous. He appeared in 2 out of 3 of the sequels for Return of the Living Dead. And so Frank bangs the drum, and inside of it a bunch of gas is released, and unfortunately Freddie and Frank inhale a bunch of it and succumb to the fumes and pass out. And then we get a view of the drum of the zombie head melting, and then the glass cracks. And the interesting thing about that is what they did is they took a skull and molded wax over it and then used heat to melt the wax, and it actually cracked the glass. That wasn't intended to happen, but it did because of the heat, and it fits really well in the movie. You hear all the time how, hey, all these lines, a lot of lines are improvised and scenes just happen. Well, that's one of the scenes from this movie that just happened. And so what they've done then is they wake up, come up front, or go back upstairs, and they've released Tar Man, and he's hungry for brains. And the reason these zombies want brains is because when you die, it's painful. So when they're reanimated, they're in pain, and the only way to get relief is through eating living human brains. And so the rest of the scene is poor Frank. The rest of the movie is poor Frank and Frank and Freddy slowly turning into zombies, and Bert and Ernie, get it, Bert and Ernie, Sesame Street. Don't know if that was intentional or not, but they are the heroes of not the heroes, but we'll call final men of this film. And they're putting the action plans together, trying to get everybody out of there. And it's them dealing with Freddy, Frank, 100 zombies outside. Then there's a punk group that some of the survivors, they have to deal with them as well, and helping them survive. And it's pretty much done in 2 buildings. There's a cemetery, funeral home, and then the medical warehouse where they send out stuff to medical school, skeletons and things like that. And a funny thing I read, it could have been just coincidence, but in the film they're talking about how do you get all these skeletons with perfect teeth to send to all these schools. And Frank goes, well, we get them from India. And Freddy asks him, where do they get all these from? And he says, well, I don't know, maybe they have a skeleton farm out there. And a few months later, India stopped shipping their skeletons out overseas. Don't know if the skeleton farm ran out of skeletons or just purely coincidence there. So anyways, that's the premise of the movie, and I won't go through everything. I'll leave something for you. But it's really, really, the comedy's well done. I enjoy this movie a lot. I've watched it well over 15, 20 times. And in this case, I needed a little pick-me-up, give me some energy again, and I grabbed it. Not many well-known actors that I know of in this, but I do know of one, Linnea Quigley, scream queen extraordinaire, and this is one of her first roles, and she has a small part, but her part will live with you for a long, long time. And let's just say they didn't spend a lot on her costume, and pretty much through most of the time she's on screen, she's in what little money they spent on the costume. But it's cheesy acting. It's overacted at times. Frank is classic cheesy actor, man. And Freddy's not much better, but it really is well done. There's a lot of memorable lines in this. And the difference between these zombies and the zombies you saw in Night of the Living Dead is, yes, they're still slow moving. And like you said, a fat guy like me, we hope when the zombies come, they're slow moving. And they have a lot of their faculties with them. They can speak, they can plot, they can set up ambushes, they even get on the ambulance radio and tell people to send more paramedics so they can get down and eat their brains. And I can't say enough about it. So I would go out. If you don't, there's plenty of different versions. And this had a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it was up there on IMDb as well, over 7. And but I picked this up at a flea market, The Return of the Living Dead, and this is the collector's edition. There's 3 other editions out there. I don't know exactly what they range in price, but they all have different things about them. This one has commentary from the actors and directors, and so if you get a chance, stream it. It's worth paying a little bit for, but you can stream it free on Tubi, I believe. And I'll check that for you right now. This movie cost $4 million to make, and it's on Pluto TV. Pluto TV is free, folks. So you can catch it on Pluto, and you can catch it on I think Tubi as well. More watch options. Yes, Tubi. So you can go get it. Tubi's free. Pluto TV is free. It's a free watch. I prefer Tubi. Yeah, you have to watch commercials, but so what? Tubi's a great place for old and weird monster movies or horror movies, and go out and get it. And I'll leave you with another note about this film. I kind of dropped halfway off there. 2 more notes then. It cost $4 million to make. It made about $14.5 million, so it was a success financially. It made over 3 times the budget, and it was also a success critically with critics as well. But Dan O'Bannon paid a few of the movie extras extra money to eat real calf brains in the film, and he went one step further. He put his money where his mouth is, and he ate raw calf brains just to show he wouldn't do anything, or he wouldn't ask them to do anything he wouldn't do. So I guess they weren't too worried about mad cow disease back then. So give it a watch. It's a 5 out of 5. I enjoy it every time. If you liked what you heard and saw, hit the bell, hit the subscribe, hit like, hit notifications so you don't miss another Undead episode. Tell your friends about us, and I'll talk to you later. And I was gonna find it. You're sitting on the pen, the magic pen.